Okay, looks like we're recording. I've got a document here, and I just wanted to, before we get into this, I want to talk a little bit about JavaScript. Rule number one, JavaScript is not Java, and Java is not JavaScript. Two different things entirely. So when you go home and say, "Hey, I'm learning Java," no, you're not. You're learning JavaScript. So there we go. That's the first order of business. You got to get the terminology right. So number two. I want to talk a little bit about web browsers, and we've talked about this in the past, the document object model, meaning that everything here is an object. The window is an object, the paragraph is an object, this paragraph is an object, all of these things. Well, with JavaScript, you can address these things, and you can make changes to them after the page is loaded. So typically with HTML, you have one shot and it kind of loads, and that's your style, and that's that. Really the only interactivity you've got is links, right? So JavaScript is an event-based programming language. And so what I mean by that is that within this document object model, there are events. So there's click, there's release, there's mouse over, mouse out. There's actually several dozen, I think, actions that can affect the page when the page loads, when you leave the page. So there's, like I said, there's a lot of actions. One of the main thing that we're going to play with today is onClick, which is, if I just bring this up here and I say JavaScript onClick, you'll see at W3 Schools here. And it's an event, right? So there's a list of events. And imagine if I looked hard, we have document object model events. So here are all of the document object model events. So you've got some things like drag enter, so you've got some interactivity here for gaming. You've got drop, again, drag and drop. Let's see here, what are some other good ones? Load. So when the page has loaded, mouse down. There's also some interesting ones for touch. You can get into, let's see if they show up here. Yeah, touch move, touch start. So you can actually use, and this is actually specific to mobile devices or tablets. So you actually touch, and it knows that you're touching it as opposed to clicking it. So that's kind of an interesting side of this. But really what we're going to look at is just onClick. So here if we go to look at onClick. onClick, perfect. And zoom in a little bit here. And you've got this chunk of code here. It says button onClick, click me button, right? So try it yourself. And this says my function. So this is the bit of JavaScript we're going to is going to execute. We can talk about that in just a second, but essentially if you click on it, it does something right there. This is a great little example of what I'm talking about. So let's see here. What should we do next? Of course, this is a button, and so this is just an attribute of HTML tag. I can apply this attribute anywhere I want. It doesn't have to be to a button. I can put it down here on this paragraph. I can run that, and I can say, oh, how about not there? How about this paragraph? Oops. And so if I click on this paragraph now, it does the same thing. So it's just a question of where I want to attach this attribute, and it will execute that bit of code. So the bit of code, let's talk about that. So I've got the script opening tag, script closing tag. You notice this is down here in the body of the document. This can go anywhere. Generally it's put up in the head, but you can also put it down here in the bottom. This is kind of the important meat of what I wanted to show you is you've got documents, so we're going to talk to the document. We're going to get element by ID, and the ID's name is demo. So this little bit of JavaScript code is what we're going to be playing with for the most part. And you might guess, get element by ID, that's the ID. So I'm telling the document to get element by ID, and then dot, and then what are we doing? So right now it says inner HTML. So we're actually changing the internal HTML that's inside this demo ID, which is right here. Right now there's nothing in here, and I could actually go 4 C's and run that, and then click on the paragraph, and it wipes out the C's and replaces it with hello world. It's kind of powerful, but you can also address this with styles too. So you can say style dot background equals red. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to click on that. Changes the style here. So it starts to give you some power here a little bit. You can also change this to display, and I can set it to none. And if I click on this, the whole paragraph goes away. So let's play around with this a little bit in our HTML document that we've started here. This is a paragraph, and this is another paragraph, and these all have IDs. So I went crazy with the IDs on this. I've got a couple of boxes here, and these are going to be my buttons. And I'm using divs, but again, any object can be clicked, can have an action associated with it, or an event associated with it. So I can say on click equals, and then quotes. I can say let's see, how should we do this? Let's see. Let's change that to display. Style dot display equals none. Okay, so we don't know if this is going to work or not, but first of all, we're going to turn on text wrapping here so we can get a little more. There we go. And if I save this and I come over here and look at my JavaScript page, reload this, and if I click on that, that element just went away. Did you see that? So coffee, and I actually just deleted that. And do you see my list moved up? So it actually takes that element out of play in the document. So it's not actually even there anymore as far as the page is concerned. You notice I put that code right here in the onClick. In the other example, we used the function chunk of code here. You can use either. It's actually better to use a function because typically what a function does is let you use it in different ways. So I can do something fancy like this. I'm going to copy this code, and I'm going to hop over to the edit, and I've got some script tag right here. So I'm going to just take this script and replace it. And I'm going to say, I'm actually going to put a piece of code right here in this function, and I'll say, I'll explain here in a second, but we're going to call it my ID. So the chunk of code here is, I'm just declaring it and saying, hey, I've got a function here, which is just a chunk of code that you can use over and over again. I'm going to name the function. I've got to open parens and close parens, and then I've got a variable here in the middle. And so what I can do is I can pass different information to this function, and then it will use that information, this little variable here in the code. And so what I can do is this. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to replace it with my ID. So now, next time I click on that, I can make whatever I want disappear by clicking on it. And so, I'll just get rid of all of this code. So now we're back to our onClick. And I'm going to make this, in this case, I'm going to say my function, give it a parens, and I'm going to pass a piece of text to it. And I'm going to call it para1. So if I click on this first box, paragraph 1 is going to disappear. And I'm going to copy this code and put it down here. And I'm going to say we're going to make item 2 disappear. So I can do the same chunk of code that I can pass off the parrot ID, or I can pass off item 2 ID. With a little luck, this example will work. Haven't been tested yet, so you never know. Okay, so I'm going to refresh and I'm going to click on that, and I just disappeared the first paragraph, and I should be able to disappear T right now. Perfect. So, practical example of this is menus. We talked about this in class a little bit. I can have a menu here and have it disappear. I can have it then reappear based on an action of clicking on something. I can have maybe the little hamburgers up here, the little 3 lines, and then when I click on that, the menu appears, and you can click on that, and then once you've clicked on it, the menu disappears again. So you can actually start building kind of navigation, that pop-ups, things like that. So you've got a lot of control. One last thing I'm going to show is alerts. So I'm going to write a function here. Okay, and you see that you've got to close it with a paragraph. So what I'm going to do is this will just give you a pop-up window. And let's when we click on this first paragraph, let's just say on let's see, maybe we can do a different example here, a different event. DOM events. Oh, let's see. Drag over, how about on mouse over? So now, if I say I'm going to call my function. I'm going to have the paragraph there. I'm going to pass this text to it, and it's a text string, so it's got to be in quotes. I'm using single quotes here because I'm in double quotes on the outside, and I can't go double quote on both. I have to go double quote to hold the whole thing, and then a single quote to hold the text. Save it, hop over here to the browser, refresh, and as I recall, what am I supposed to click on? Ah, I rolled over it. Okay, so if I roll over that paragraph, that first paragraph, it gives me my pop-up. And it will annoyingly do that every time I roll over it. Very useful, not really, but you get the idea. So you've seen some JavaScript. I'm going to pop back over here. We'll look at the code one more time. My style here is very rudimentary. Got just the body, made the text a little bit bigger. I've got a couple of boxes here down at the bottom here, a couple of divs, so I could click on those things. The bulk of it here, the bulk of the tricks here is in the script right here. So I've got script, I've got a function, I'm calling a function, I've got an open bracket and a closed bracket, very much like CSS. I've got the name of my function, and I've got my variable, and now I can actually address this style. And you can pile these things up here. You can actually change, address multiple IDs. You can actually have it change the HTML. You can just keep piling these things up. So you can actually do a whole string of operations by just one click. So that's also a good bonus. All right, well, I hope this helps. We'll talk more about this in class, I am sure.